Hey, and welcome to a new edition of In the District. Today we're sitting down with District 14 Council Member Pierina Sanchez. We'll discuss early beginnings, her priorities as she introduces and works through passing new legislation, and much more. I'm Brittany Skyler, and this program is brought to you from BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx. Councilmember, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So before we get into everything that you're currently doing, let's talk about your early beginnings, right? Your story is one of resilience and community. Growing up in the Bronx as the daughter of Dominican immigrants, how did your upbringing shape your passion for public service?
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, I always start with sharing one of my earliest memories when I was a child. There was a fire in the building where I lived. My mom was yelling, screaming for my brothers and I to get up and get out of the apartment. And I remember being a little girl, we ran downstairs. I had this little green coat. I was, 3 feet tall, looking up and seeing the flames come out of the building. And over the years, asking my mom, what happened that day? Why was there a fire? Why did we have to lose everything? And learning from her that it was actually my first experience of tenant harassment. So my mother is a 5-story walk-up. My mom lived in the 3rd floor. Her sister lived on the 5th floor, and we were all close as neighbors. And the neighbors had gotten together to file an HP action, what is now known as an HP action in court with the Legal Aid Society. And they were alleging there was no hot water, no heat, there were rats, issues that might be familiar, of course, to our neighbors today. And the landlord decided that they were going to harass us. I don't think they foresaw the fire would become so large. But that early experience of that tenant harassment, of the way that fire disrupted our lives, we ended up moving for several years, that really shaped me, Having the example of my mom and my aunts who fought for their rights, who stood up for themselves, seeing them work, seeing some of them were street vendors, some of them worked, their day jobs were as janitors. They're my model, right? And they're my inspiration. And even today, when I look around the district, it's still us, right? Mm-hmm. It's our people who are, maybe they're coming from a different country and they don't speak English quite yet, or they have children but they don't know how to navigate the school system. That was me, and that was my family. And so that upbringing and the way that their sacrifices led to me being able to get a full scholarship to go to Harvard, to study in Princeton, to take that summer internship and work in the White House, all of that comes from the sacrifices that they made. And of course, the public programs that were available, right? I went to this after school and enrichment program called Upward Bound at Bronx Community College. And that was life-changing for me. And so the way that I grew up and the trajectory that I've been able to have, I completely attribute to the power of my family members, but also the power that public service can have to transform lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that some of the issues that you faced are some that we're still seeing today. And I think it's sometimes important to have somebody with that lived experience fighting, because it makes the fight just that much more intense, because you know what they've been through. And with that, you also mentioned your very impressive education. You went to both Harvard on a full ride and then got your master's from Princeton. So how did those experiences prepare you for leadership, and what challenges did you face in those spaces?
Yeah. I think this makes me really think about what it is to be a woman in government, what it is to be pretty young looking. I'm not that young, but I think I do come across and look young just because I have a higher pitched voice. I didn't choose that. That's what God gave me, right? And I look younger. I'm smaller. And so these characteristics about myself, going through Harvard, going through Princeton, being an Afro-Latina in these spaces, really were shocking at the points that I was in them, right? So, coming from, 196th Street by the Grand Concourse where I grew up, and then walking into those, very fancy gates at Harvard, and everybody, is driving their really fancy cars, and, even a lot of kids had assistants helping them with their bags, move into their dorms, was really a shocking experience. But I think the one takeaway, and every time that I go to a school and I speak to young people and I speak to the kids in our district, I'm like, look at where I came from, look at where I was, and people weren't smarter than me. I was just as smart as anyone else, and we were all struggling in, our organic chemistry class. We were all going through it together, and so that means that anybody from our neighborhood is just as good or better because of everything that we have to endure and overcome as anyone else coming from a wealthy background. It's just the luck of the draw. And so I always share that because I see the light in our kids' face, you know, when I go to a third grade classroom or a fourth grade, and they're like, "You met Barack Obama?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did." And you can meet whoever you want to as well. It's a really powerful experience to have broken into spaces and made it out, and know that I measure up just as well as anyone else can.
You know, that's such a beautiful message that if you work hard, your circumstances don't have to define you. And with hard work and dedication, anything is possible. You did bring up a point that I do want to mention. You know, you said, having a high-pitched voice and you look kind of young, and being a woman in government. As a young Latina woman in this industry as well, I can kind of understand. So can you tell me a little bit about what challenges have you faced there?
Yeah. I think the embodiment of this challenge actually happened just last week. I was chairing I'm the chair of Housing and Buildings in the New York City Council. Super powerful too because of that connection with the fire that I lived through and the experiences that our neighbors have today. But I was chairing my hearing, and I'm also a new mom. I have a 2-year-old and I have a newborn. She's just 3 months old. And, I have, the commissioners of these agencies, especially the Department of Buildings. They're all, in their uniforms and, look really official. They have badges, they look, really tall, everything else, right? And here I am at the dais, it's actually with the star behind me. And I'm carrying my daughter because my daughter, she is nursing. She exclusively nurses. She's given me a really hard time. I know some moms out there can relate. She won't take the bottle. She has to eat with me. And so she comes with me everywhere I go. And my work doesn't stop, right? And so she's with me. And that experience was my first time doing something like this. Chairing a hearing, holding the administration accountable for, commitments that the Adams administration has made that I don't see reflected in the administration's budget, commitments to things like inspectors to keep people safe in their homes, commitments like that not being reflected. And here I am bouncing my baby and saying, "Listen, I need to see this in the budget, okay?" and I think it's that embodiment of what it means to have representatives in government who have the lived experience of a representation of the community, right? So whether you're a young woman or you're a new mom or you have challenges or socio-demographic characteristics that mean that you're usually underrepresented in government and in spaces and in journalism and in business and everything else, breaking into those spaces and showing that it's possible and that it doesn't have to be at the mold that realistically, right, that men have set in the past, that it can be a different mold, I think is really powerful and something that is future. Like it's thinking toward the future. We've been this way in the past, but what does it look like for government to be inclusive? What does it look like for these industries to be inclusive? And it's really empowering to think about it that way, versus when the baby started crying in the middle of the hearing. That didn't feel as empowering, but when I was able to calm her and keep going, that was, it just shout out to all the moms out there who do it every day.
Absolutely. And again, I think, a beautiful message, right? You're showing people that you can do it all. And again, with hard work and dedication, anything is possible. So currently you represent District 14, which oversees neighborhoods of Kingsbridge, Fordham, University Heights, and Mount Hope. What are some of the most pressing issues going on in your district at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 2 characteristics that I would highlight about our neighborhood. Well, 3. 1, we're awesome. We are resilient. We are 98% people of color, so African and African American or Latino. We are over 45% foreign born, and I'm sure that has only increased since the last census in 2020, the past 5 years. And we're a community of strivers. So what that means in terms of coupling it with the issues that our community is facing is that housing insecurity is the biggest challenge. And housing insecurity looks like people falling behind on their rent because the rent is so expensive. but it also looks like people facing conditions that they shouldn't have to live with within their homes. So we're talking about no heat, no hot water during the winter. We're talking about issues of pervasive mold, lead-based paint that's not being abated, all of these requirements that are in law that are not being followed by landlords. That's the number one issue, and that's why I feel very fortunate to be the chair of the Housing Committee, because I can tackle that straight on, right? The second issue that I would highlight goes hand in hand with our housing issue is economic inequality, right? Our folks are in jobs that do not pay enough. So whether they are, working in retail and retail jobs don't pay very well, or they're in the food services industry and that doesn't pay well, we're talking about a group of people, a community that we could stand to have advocacy for them so that we can get them into higher paying jobs. And the third is kind of a twofer, but the third I would highlight is education, right? Education is the key to unlock these challenges. If we can get our kids from pre-K, 3K, 2K, we're going to be talking about in the city council budget process this year. If we can get them early on to have opportunities to develop themselves, whether it's in that young stage, or if they're in primary school, right, like K through 5, and they have access to after-school programs, enrichment programs, then that can make a real big difference for them. I did ballet when I was in the 5th grade. I was really bad at it, but I got to see what it's like to not just be in a discipline where you're sitting down and you're writing with pen and paper, but how do I project myself? How do I hold hold your posture? Something that I started learning at 10 years old is so valuable for a young child. And so I'd say those three challenges of making sure that people can be safe in their homes and afford their homes, making sure that people are earning a living or thriving wage so they can support their family, and also making sure that the education system is treating the child holistically so that they can develop into the best version of themselves, leads us to being in a safer community, which is, something that our neighbors care a lot about.
Absolutely. I will say I did ballet myself. Ended up becoming a salsa dancer. Here we are today.
Me too.
Right. But when we come back, we're going to talk about some other bills that you're proposing and some things that I know that you are a champion for. So it is time to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with Council Member Pierina Sanchez. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching a new edition of In the District with District 14 Councilmember Pierina Sanchez. So to continue our conversation, I want to talk about something that I know you've been a champion of. I've been in this space since 2021, and I watched you when you got inaugurated. Something that I know you're very passionate about is the Kingsbridge Armory. So I know that you started off 2025 with some exciting news regarding this armory. Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. The armory is a castle. To me, that's what I see as an 8-year-old walking by it, 9-year-old just looking up and looking at these towers and wondering what happens in this building. What can this building mean for our community? And for quite literally the past almost 30 years, 25 to 30 years, the armory has been functionally vacant, right? There have been attempts to redevelop it in the past that have fallen short. And the armory has a really and it's wild, right? Like, it has a wild history. If you think about it, during World War II, 40,000 soldiers during World War II were doing training exercises inside of the Armory. If you fast forward into the 80s, the birth of hip hop in the Bronx, there were concerts inside of the Armory. There were races that also happened in the Armory. During the pandemic, it was a food hub. But it's never had a permanent use, right? A permanent use that is delivering for the community. There have been two attempts in the past, and they've both fallen short for different reasons. The first time, it was supposed to be a mall, but it didn't make it through the ULURP process because the community wanted the living wage and the developers wouldn't commit. And then the second time, it was supposed to be the National Ice Skating Rink, and that fell through because the developer team wasn't able to secure the financing. So when I took office, I said, no, we're gonna get this done. It's gonna happen. We're gonna do everything that we need to do to ensure that it doesn't fail because of community opposition, such as the first time, and that it doesn't fail because of financing, which is what happened the second time. And so, in 2023, we started this community engagement process. 4,000 Bronxites participated. We had meetings in the lobbies of buildings near the Armory. We had, it was a lot of fun. We had Zooms at all different kinds of parts of the day, and we had a really robust participation from the Bronx. So finally, the city, the Administration Economic Development Corporation, they issued an RFP, which is the competition, to select who was going to be the winner. And the winner was selected this January. This is a very exciting development because we worked, my office, Council Member Sanchez's office, with Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, who, by the way, has been there for every step of this fight 25 years ago and until today. We tried to ensure that robust participation, and then we also tried to ensure that those two reasons that the project failed in the past didn't happen this time. So the developer was selected with really robust commitments from the city and state. $215 million we've been able to secure. Woohoo, yay! Awesome. We've been able to secure for the development. Now, the development itself could cost anywhere between $500 million and $1 billion, depending on what they end up building out. But it is a very big deal to be at this stage with that much money in the bank for the project and with a development team that, one, has committed to prioritizing what the community wants and has said is important, and two, has the financing that they need, has proven that they have the financing that they need to bring the project forward.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I remember early on as well, seeing I think it was like the Post-it notes on what do you want to see, and there was even a competition during Bronx Week, I think in 2023, where a bunch of college students came and they kind of redesigned, and architecture students built out what their dreams and visions were. So this has been a long time coming.
Yes.
And with that, the redevelopment is being described as transformative and equitable. What does that mean for Bronx residents?
Yeah. Absolutely. The community was clear. 4,000 people came out, as I mentioned, and they were clear that they want this space to be for young people, right? So whether it's after school programming or sports or dance, or we want to make sure that there's space in there for them. We want it to be an intergenerational space, though, right? So also having space for our seniors to take a break or have activities. But in addition to that accessibility for the community and for the enrichment of the community, the other big priority that we heard from people from the community is good paying jobs, so good paying union jobs. And I'm very excited that through the negotiations, right, because even though there hasn't been news about the Armory until January of 2025, it was about a year of silence, which, had people asking a lot of questions. We have still been pushing in the background. And I'm very proud that we've been able to secure what's called a PLA, a project labor agreement, such that the Armory construction is going to be done with union jobs, by union labor. And those union representatives or union workers, there's going to be a priority, of course, for Bronx union members. And then another thing that we're fighting for in the long term is that after the construction, when we start seeing this space transformed into a place where there are businesses and there are nonprofits and there is activity, those shops, right, whatever they become, we're fighting for labor neutrality, so that if there is an entity that comes into the Armory, the Kingsbridge Armory, and they say are not unionized, that they're able to, try. It's called labor neutrality policy. So that's a major component out of it because, again, we need economic development in the Bronx, and what that translates to brass tacks is jobs that pay wages that allow people to not be housing cost burden, that allow people to put their kid in an after-school program if they want to, and things like that.
That's amazing. And speaking of, doing things for the community to help the youth specifically, there is the West Bronx Community Safety Partnership. So this safety partnership addresses rising violence in the West Bronx, particularly gun violence. So what factors contribute to this trend, and how will the partnership address them?
Thank you so much. We have a troubling trend in the West Bronx. So when you look at New York City as a whole, and if you listen to the mayor or governor talking about public safety in the city and the state, they are doing victory laps. They're like, look, the subway is safer, the city is safer as a whole. But if you live in our section, if you live in the 46th NYPD precinct, or if you live in the 52nd, you are having a very different experience. The city has had major shooting incidents down about 4 to 10%, depending on which month we look at the data. But our area, for example, the 52nd precinct, we're talking about 140% increase in violence. And so when we look at that, and then we couple these violent trends with the challenges that we talked about earlier, the housing insecurity, the jobs that don't pay enough, the schools that don't have enough enrichment programming and after-school programming and activities for the kids, when you couple all that together, then we get at what this partnership is about, right? A safe community is one that is economically stable, right? I'm not making that up. Just sorry, no, not to pick on Park Slope, but just drive, drive or take the subway to Park Slope, right? They don't have shooting incidents the way that we do. A safe community is one where folks are stably housed. Again, drive over to Country Club in the Bronx. Yes. They don't have these buildings that are deteriorating and falling apart and not providing heat and hot water. A safe community is one where there are community centers and there are activities for the kids. Drive over to Riverdale or walk over to Riverdale, because we're pretty close by, and you see that they have the Riverdale Y. We don't have any community centers, essentially. Right. And so when we talk about the West Bronx Community Safety Partnership, we're coming together, all the elected officials in the area. So we're talking about 15 altogether, members of Congress, state senators, state assembly members, city council members, and I'm dragging all of my colleagues with me. We're all coming together, pulling our community-based organizations into it. So the Jerome Avenue Revitalization Collaborative, which includes Bronx Community College, Lehman College, Morris Heights Health Center, you name it, Northwest Bronx Community Clergy Coalition, CASA, right? It's a group of, over 100 organizations that have been invited to participate. We're putting our heads together and we're saying we need deep investment into the West Bronx, not only to stop violence when it happens, right? Or after it has already happened, but also to stop it upstream, right? By enriching the community and making the community into the haven that it needs to be. And we only started to meet about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and already we have soft commitments from the governor's team of a $10 million infusion into our programs, right? This is gonna be more after-school programs. This is going to really serve the grassroots, and that's only the beginning, right? The city council is also in our budget process, and we're gonna be having specific asks to the mayor, because it's about coming together and not just having a conversation about public safety focus on boots on the ground, how many police do we have, how many investigators, because it's too late. If people are already shooting, people are already interfacing with the justice system, it's late. We want to get people before. We want to enrich the community and empower the community before. And so I'm very excited to have everyone's partnership, because when you have a letter, which is what we started with, when you have a letter that's signed by 15 different elected officials and all of these community-based organizations, you get the attention of administrations and you get the infusion of funds that we need to invest in our communities.
Absolutely. And I think in order to prevent these incidents from happening, it is always tackling the root cause of, especially when it comes to the youth, of giving them safe spaces and spaces to, after school programs and all of that. But with that, you have some upcoming community events. Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot going on. Yeah. And just kind of prefacing this by saying, before I was in the city council, as a city council member, I have been a staffer, I have worked in think tanks, I have worked for different mayors in Chicago and in here in New York City for de Blasio, and in the White House and all of this. And so all of these experiences I bring with me to make sure that, everything we do has a purpose, right? We're not just, doing a turkey drive to get turkeys to people and take pictures, right? No, we're registering people to vote during the turkey drive. We're making sure that, folks participate in participatory budgeting. And so that of course, to answer your questions, is something I'm very excited about. So between March 29th and April 6th, we have participatory budgeting happening, which means that the community gets to decide how we spend $1 million. So follow us on social media, make sure you vote. There's some school improvements that are in there. There are some neighborhood improvements, but I want to make sure to empower the community on what we actually do. Our spring festival is going to be at St. James Park on April 19th, and I'm really excited to see folks there because there will be a bouncy house and nice music and popcorn and all things. But it's really an opportunity for neighbors to talk to each other, for me to talk to the neighborhood as well, and make sure that we're registering people to vote, that we're getting people civically active, and that we're hearing from the community what our priorities should be in City Hall.
That's amazing. And as we start to wrap up, tell our audience about any free resources that are available at your office.
Yes, the most important thing that I will mention to the community is folks are scared. We're in a moment where the federal government, the Trump administration, is quite literally attacking New York City and sanctuary cities across the country. And so it's very important that folks know their rights, right? We have, like I said, 45% of our folks are foreign born, and probably higher than that. So in our office, we have free immigration lawyers who you can make an appointment with if you live in our community, and you can have one-on-one consultation. We also have housing attorneys who can inform you about your rights. When we do these community events, those folks are also available to answer questions. And finally, if you have a problem or you have a question and we don't know the answer, we will figure it out together.
Awesome. Can you just tell them where to go, maybe who to call?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are at 2065 Morris Avenue, which is on the corner of Burnside. So please visit us. You can also call us at 347-590-2874 and follow us on social media. If you direct message me, I'll see it. CMPI Sanchez, and that's on Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, and one more that I'm forgetting, but just Google that and follow us, and we want to hear from the community.
Just all the things, right?
Yes.
All the things. Council Member Sanchez, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. Remember, you can always watch this program anytime, anywhere on BronxNet.org and YouTube. While you're there, be sure to follow BronxNet on social media to find out who we'll sit down with next on In the District from BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx. I'm Brittany Skyler. Talk to you soon.